Okay, it's Brainwash with Dr. Tom and Guitar Picks with Cyril Lance today. Cyril, can you tell me how you came up with your list?
Painfully. to narrow it down to 20 people was tough, but you know, I've had so many different kind of influences in my life that I started thinking about it, and I kind of thought about it in a historical perspective, and kind of what brought me to where I am today, and what were the kind of albums that were kind of seminal to me. And then I actually thought, well, I had to exclude things, so I started really excluding whole genres of music. So, like, I thought, well, maybe I'll stick with mainly guitar players, because even though actually I listen to more other types of musicians, I more often will listen to a horn player or a piano player or a B3 player rather than a guitar player. But I just thought, well, it may make more sense for people to hear mostly guitar players, since I am primarily known as a guitar player.
Okay, on to the list. Muddy Waters, 19 years old.
Yeah, Muddy Waters. Well, he kind of started me off with this whole thing. I'm primarily known as a blues musician here in this area, and I grew up in Honolulu.
Oh yeah.
Hawaii, and I was kind of a loner as a kid and didn't have much influence. You know, I wasn't getting a lot of music, and there weren't a lot of people coming through town. I just, one day, my brother, who was out of the house at the time, must have left the radio on, college radio, and I turned it on, and Muddy Mississippi Waters Live came on, and that's the pick we'll listen to, is one of his songs, 19 Years Old. And I mean, that just changed me forever, hearing Muddy Waters, and I didn't even know anything about blues history, and you know, Hawaii is far off the beaten track.
Can you give us a little bit of this, either Muddy Waters in general, or the 19 Years Old, a riff or a lick or something?
Well, the thing that most people know about Muddy, you know, that, and the first thing I heard was they played I'm a Man, you know. When I was a young boy, about the age of 5. I mean, everybody knows that. And that's what came on the radio, and his voice just took me. And actually, what's also important about this album was that's the album I learned to play guitar to. I didn't have any teachers or wasn't playing with anybody. And also, I never learned any licks. I never learned any of the stuff, but I would just listen and I'd do my little picking, you know. Kind of stuff, and I just picked along, and that was really the first album I learned to play guitar to. Okay.
Speaking of guitars, tell us about what the one you just played.
Well, this is an old National Steel. It's an old Resophonic guitar, and it's got that great, you know. That great old bluesy sound.
Yeah.
You know. So Muddy Waters was really like one of my first real albums I ever bought. In fact, I think it was. I had bought a Danny Kaye album when I was a kid, but I tried to find that, actually. I thought that would be a fun way to start off the show. This Danny Kaye musical I saw when I was a kid. That was my first album. I think Muddy Waters was the second album I bought.
Okay, it's Brainwash for Dr. Tom and Guitar Picks with Cyril Lance, Kenny Burrell. Midnight Blue.
Kenny Burrell is the second album I bought, and I got the album here, and let's see. So I got this Muddy Waters, right, and I knew nothing about the blues, nothing about anything really at that point in my life, but I knew I loved it, and so I went down to the record store, and because I didn't have any money, I looked at, I went to the cutout bin, which is where I bought, And here it was for 99 cents. So it said, this album said Kenny Burrell, Midnight Blue. And I said, well, it's got the words blue in it. And then I looked at the back, and it had this quote. It says, the blues, Duke Ellington once wrote, the blues ain't nothing but a cold, gray day, and all night long it stays that way. The blues is a one-way ticket from your love to nowhere. The blues ain't nothing but a black crepe veil ready to wear. And I said, I gotta buy this album. But little did I know this was a jazz album. And you know, this is a classic album. Stanley Turrentine, tenor sax, but this is before he made it kind of big with the soft jazz stuff. Ray Barretto's playing congas, Major Holly's on bass, and these are just like the classic session musicians. And it turns out Kenny Burrell was the definitive jazz guitar player. But he did this album. It's a kind of a dedication to jazz blues. And this was a really important album to me, because it kind of opened my ears to that whole world. And you know, Kenny Burrell played with John Coltrane. I mean, he played with everybody, and so that kind of led me on another separate path. And I think what I loved about Kenny Burrell was he just was so smooth and clean. And so that's the second album I learned to play guitar on. I mean, I just played those two albums over and over and over again, and just jammed along with them. Those were really two albums for many years. You know, that was pretty much it. And you know, I started hearing other stuff and getting other influences along the way. A lot of the tunings that were applied to Hawaiian music were slide tunings that I think, you know, there's a lot of crossbreeding between the southern U.S. music and Hawaiian music. You know, the way it became taken from just, you know, Hawaiian chants into kind of modern folk music.
Okay. Between the two guitars you've got set up, is there a little of this Midnight Blue you can give us?
Yeah, actually. Anyway, but that's embarrassing. Make me play that after 20 years. This is Dr. Tom's humiliation show here.
It's Brainwash with Dr. Tom and Guitar Picks with Cyril Lance. Benny Goodman, Limehouse Blues.
Yeah. Benny Goodman, man. I started out, my parents gave me a real cheap little clarinet when I was probably about 8 years old. You know, I had lessons and stuff and was taught pretty much classical music, but Benny Goodman somehow snuck into my consciousness. And this is pre-guitar. So I was a big Benny Goodman fan, and I was really fortunate when I was living in England at the time. This is probably in the late 60s or maybe early 70s. Benny Goodman did a reunion tour of one of his original bands, like with Lionel Hampton and everything, at the Albert Hall. And it was my birthday, and my parents took me to see Benny Goodman.
Cool, yeah.
So that's like a real, I mean, I'll never forget that. Now I was totally turned on to the whole jazz swing thing. And I think that whole era of swing, some of the most amazing, I mean, people don't, you know, that it's never, nobody's ever swung as hard as that period. As far, I mean, people try, and you know, the greats do, but I mean, you know, that was such an amazing period of music with such a mesh of like African American traditions of rhythm and blues, and a mesh with like, you know, classical music composition and arranging, and it just, so Benny to me was, he just like swung effortlessly. And I got this recording, again, it was kind of like a fluke recording, but this is a direct-to-disc recording towards the end of his life. And the thing about this album is, in direct-to-disc, you have to record the whole album live. You can't stop. And so this is a live performance, and the track I picked for you has this like little unknown guitar player plays classical guitar, and there's a breakdown on it, which I think is just absolutely amazing. And it shows Benny, even at, what was he, like 78 years old or something, just effortlessly swinging away, you know. And he just had like lyricism, rhythm, harmonic. He had everything I would want as a musician, you know. So he was I don't listen to a lot of Benny Goodman nowadays, but he was a real inspiration to me. And I used to put the Benny Goodman album on and try and play my little squeaky clarinet to it. My sister would be all mad at me and, you know, yelling at me, "Make him stop, Mom, Dad, make him stop."
You brought him in, take him out, right?
Exactly. So, you know, I think my family suffered because of my love for Benny Goodman.